Welcome everyone to our Cost of Living Summit. My name's Philip Glanville and I'm the Mayor of Hackney. I'm starting us off with a bit of a scene setting and introduction. It's not a big PowerPoint or a big lecture, you'll be pleased to know. And we have two parts of the meeting which are interactive and two panels, one chaired by me and the second chaired by Councillor Williams, but I'll explain more about that when we get to that section of the summit. I really appreciate people taking the time out this evening in very busy lives. We've not had the best weather recently. We've got a selection of partners, council officers, cabinet members here, but the most important thing is obviously yourselves as Hackney residents. I'm under no illusions as Mayor what a challenging period we're facing due to the cost of living crisis. We've had relatively benign weather recently, but we do face one of the most difficult winters in a generation. People are talking about the rising cost of living in terms of now multiple interlinked crises. So if you're a homeowner, you're seeing real challenges around mortgage rates. Private renters in Hackney are facing ever increasing rents and an ever decreasing supply of private rented accommodation, with often multiple households competing for single properties. We've got the cost of living crisis in terms of food inflation and supply issues, and then we've got household bills being fueled by energy prices, all of which act together to push people into poverty, those especially on fixed incomes, but we've also got the scourge of in-work poverty and the lack of salary increases maintaining links to inflation. Even though before the current crisis, we know that people were facing a cost of living crisis in Hackney. It was exacerbated by the recent pandemic. And the most sobering fact that I think we always talk about in these terms is that almost half of children in Hackney were growing up in poverty after housing costs are taken into account. And we can only imagine that that situation is getting worse. It's really clear that unless we, and there's a collective we there, the council, local communities, partners and the government step in, the cost of living crisis will not only make poverty worse in Hackney, but also push people already in poverty into destitution. We know that poverty has a knock-on effect in society, and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation estimates that poverty costs the state £69 billion every year. The solutions to poverty would cost a lot less. But I'm not here to make political points, but it represents around £1 in every 5 spent on public services, making up for the damage that poverty does to people's lives in boroughs like Hackney. The impacts, as I said, of poverty could get worse this winter and will be far more wide-ranging than in the pandemic. But support from central government is much, much more limited than it was during the pandemic response, especially those winters where we had extra support. And we also know that we face a budget moment in the next couple of weeks that may well see further pressure on public service finances. So that's the context of why we're holding this event today. We want to build on the work done over the last 4 years as part of the Council's poverty reduction framework. And I've been really clear as Mayor that poverty reduction, a focus on the most vulnerable in the borough, is our top priority. It was in the last term and it will be in this, and especially into this winter. During the pandemic, the effort became more acute and we had to campaign for what became the Winter Fund and is now the Household Support Fund. And I'm really pleased the Household Support Fund does exist this winter, and do thank the government for that. If you were with us as a community during the pandemic, and many people volunteering, helping the most vulnerable over those lockdowns and social distancing measures, and I know many of the organisations that are taking part tonight were the real front line of that combined effort to support people through that crisis. We worked in new ways and in new partnerships, new organisations set up, and community groups were relied on like never before. And I again reiterate my thanks for everyone that was involved in that response and asking them to dig even deeper this time. Recently, I've been out in the community taking part in conversations with Hackney Citizens, a partnership of faith organisation, and others, including the Hackney Food Bank. I was really pleased to be in Clapton and Hackney Downs, where Aphrodite have opened their facility, and they're in partnership with other organisations like Positive East. And it was the first time that I saw the Help at Hand leaflet the council has produced out in the community, making a difference to people's lives and the information that they have. The partnerships we built during COVID are being renewed. They're at the heart of our response, and we need to make sure that we take those lessons of co-produced solutions, as we did when we were working on vaccine take-up, to keep, in this case, not a virus at bay, but poverty at bay. We know that global events deepen this crisis, and they could make the crisis even worse during the course of this winter. But the whole purpose of tonight is to look at our localised response, really build on those strong foundations, because despite the fact that we have that deprivation, despite the fact residents and businesses and community organisations are going through these challenges, there is a real depth of support and strong foundations for our response here. We have excellent partnerships with our public service colleagues, incredible charities and voluntary sector organisations, and ultimately the people of Hackney that make the difference. Today's panels will cover the support that we're putting in place for residents and the work that we are doing with partners to make the most of our collective resources and the issues that partners are facing on the ground, because this is supposed to be an interactive summit, and also what they need from all of us to continue their work in partnership to deliver for residents. So there's going to be some asks from community organisations later on in the evening. We also want to hear, and we'll be capturing it in the questions and Q&A, the impact of the cost of living crisis on you, Hackney residents, and your ideas about how all of us collectively might be able to go further. I did just want to come through a little bit about what we've done so far, but that is not in a list-based complacent way. I just want to make sure that what we are doing and what we've got out there is sort of firmly understood. And we're using every bit of resource we have, and the cost of living crisis in terms of inflation and interest rates has an impact on the council as well. So we don't have that room for manoeuvre that we once may have had. But we are coordinating with others to make sure that support is available. I have a huge thanks to the local NHS for funding some of our work to maximise people's incomes. I think that shows the strength of the partnerships that I was talking about. And I'll come on to where that funding is directly going very, very briefly in a second. We also launched our recent Help at Hand booklet. It's a virtual resource and a physical resource. 10,000 booklets out there in the community. If you want one, please get in touch. If your community organisation would benefit for having some, please do tell us. That has a whole collection of not just our response, but the community response in there, and some of the areas that people can go to for help, from everything from lunch clubs to cook and eat classes and community meals, all the way through to the energy support you can get from your provider. Just as we did, though, through the pandemic, we don't just want to be firefighting and reacting. We need to think about the preventative support and how we can lay foundations after the immediate crisis for building a more resilient borough. And that's something that our poverty reduction strategy has a real focus on. So the 6-point plan that we have in place firstly starts with the Money Hub, and that's where we've deployed some of those NHS resources. So if you think about how the council previously was structured, we're bringing together many of the parts of the organisation that are working with vulnerable residents to create a new team of specialist advisors who will support those in severe hardship who have no other source of monetary support available. There is £800,000 in total within the support packages there, £600,000 of council funding, and some of that government funding from the household support grant. And as I said, the staffing costs are being covered by the NHS and the council. We're going to be launching, or have launched this week, an online form to complete. We're going to create a network of organisations to understand how the Money Hub work and make sure that people have the opportunities to come forward, talk to the Money Hub and get the extra income that they need. And there's £15 billion worth of unclaimed benefits in this country, whether it's pensioner credit or Healthy Start vouchers, or childminder support. And we want to really energise that work here in the borough and get that income into people's pocket. We're really conscious of the digital divide, so it isn't just an online form. We'll be using our libraries and the service centre to offer support for people and organisations to fill out that form, or you can call the council on 020 835 63111. All that information will be made available after the event. We're also targeting support to residents we know that are in need. So there's a new tranche of the Household Support Fund confirmed from this October to next March. That makes the total for the year £5.6 million of resource that we're able to deploy into households at risk of poverty. It might sound like a lot of money, but if we look at the number of households in Hackney that are in poverty, it's a third of households. It would only be the equivalent of £160 per household for the whole year. And we're obviously seeing energy bills where they've gone up by thousands of pounds. So we're conscious of that limited resource, and that's why we're targeting it. It also pales into insignificance with the cut to universal credit, which was worth £35 million to Hackney residents when that £20 was taken away. The current tranche we're being used to support, as I said, residents about the Money Hub, schools, work with some of our diverse communities and targeting support to those leaving care, those in hostels accommodation, and also taking those referrals to partners in the voluntary sector. The third plank of support is around energy support. Hackney's energy advice contractor partner is the London Energy Saving Squad, LESS. And they've agreed to do energy advice drop-in sessions at designated hubs across the borough, and we'll be doing more to invest in that work. And there's some long-term plans around relaunching the Green Homes Fund in January to help with retrofit and supporting households to make themselves more energy efficient. We're really focused on children and families. That's the purpose of the Household Support Fund, and obviously that's where a great deal of need is. So embedding all of our support in the work of children and education is vitally important. 1.5 million will go into that work, and that is ensuring that we respond to holiday hunger and connect our schools, our children's centres, our youth hubs around a really coherent response around family hunger. I also announced, alongside Deputy Mayor Bramble, a task force to review our food poverty response in terms of term time food poverty affecting children in our schools and settings, looking at some of the best practice, building on some discussions that have been led by our Scrutiny Commission, and working out a long-term way forward to tackling food poverty during term time. The idea of the task force is to listen to schools, community organisations about their ideas and think about how we could expand the free school meal offer in Hackney and have an impact on those food poverty figures. The fifth plank of our support is around supporting community partners. Every step of the way, going back to COVID response, we always try to make sure that proportion of the investment we were putting into our response went to community partners. We didn't want to hoard that as a council, and we knew we couldn't do it all. So we want to increase the support for organisations on the ground. So £95,000 from the NHS fund is to look at how we support voluntary sector organisations in our food justice work around purchasing food this winter and helping work with people like Volunteer Centre Hackney to increase the amount of volunteers that can be deployed into this effort. We've also really crucially increased the share of our grant funding for advice and repurposed some of our existing grants around this crisis response. Again, we don't have all of the answers, and I'm sure in the conversations later we'll be exploring about what more we can do. We also want to support fundraising around the free food hubs that coordinate the distribution of food waste, and we recognise the contribution that organisations like the Food Bank and other food banks across the borough make. Turning a little bit to the role that warm hubs might play this winter, we're going to designate and already have our libraries as a network of warm hubs. And we're going to work with partners to open more hubs, but really aligning that with community activity already. I think we're all of a view across the community sector in Hackney that we want to make sure that if people come somewhere that they're not just warm, but they get other support. And so crucially partnering with community organisations and our housing team when it comes to use of community halls is going to be a really important part of our plans as we work through those warm hubs. We also want to make sure that we're joining up the efforts on the ground in local areas, and there's 2 staff dedicated to being a bridge between our community activity, our health partners and the community, working with local ward councillors. I think we've already been out to Dalston Ward Forum, but also linking up organisations on the ground with community infrastructure funds and other projects. And I don't want to list all of the other things that we've been doing in the background, but some of those community funds really do provide new infrastructure for our anchor institutions, from people like Boiler House to Clapton Commons and Liberty Hall and others. And I mentioned at the start, we've just launched a community energy fund, £300,000 to make sure that our schools and community organisations are more resilient in terms of the energy they use, saving carbon, but ultimately making them more resilient when it comes to bills next year and beyond. The final part is a whole system plan. That can sound really jargonistic, but it is vital that we all act together. So we are bringing together a group from across the council and our health partners to oversee this work. That's partly because of the way we've pooled resources, but it's also equipping frontline staff, whether they work for the public sector, voluntary sector organisations, whether it's council or NHS or the police or whoever, that they're equipped to support residents and can support work in a person-centred way. And we want to enhance the work of our networks, bringing them together every fortnight to develop this work further and track this emergency intervention and making sure it's having the impact that we all hope that it will have and needs to have if we're to respond to the crisis. We're going to also use that to take reflection. So some of the reflections from today will go into that network. We are really conscious that we need to continue to identify and close gaps where they occur. But just the crucial message, if you've got anyone working for your organisation that wants to be part of that work, the tools for frontline worker sessions, as I say, take place fortnightly. And if you email john.davies, and that's DAVIES at hackney.gov.uk, you can sign up for that training programme. I'll just finish with a couple of new announcements. So I've been listing some of the things we're doing already and that we're really investing in and amplifying, but we're also really keen to say that we were never complacent and that we needed to do more. And as we're preparing the council's budget for next year, we're starting to pull together our plans for the cost of living support elements of that budget. Now, formally, that budget does not go to full council until March 2023. But we want to signal some of the things that will be in that budget and that will be going through Cabinet in the next couple of months. So a crucial area of our support is council tax reduction scheme. It's the local benefit that supports the most vulnerable in Hackney to pay their council tax. We spend just under £30 million on that every year. And we are going to be making an additional one-off payment of £25 to every single person eligible, every household eligible for the council tax reduction scheme, which in effect will cushion those households from any council tax rise next year. We're also going to double the size of our council tax discretionary hardship fund, and we're going to invest a further £600,000 into direct support. Some of that will go into the Money Hub. Some of that will also be supporting refugees and those with no recourse to public funds. A crucial part of our COVID response was recognising those that were really challenged, that couldn't access other forms of funding and were at real risk of destitution. And this hard fact that there are people living in Hackney in home office accommodation expected to live on £8 a week in a cost of living crisis. We do need to invest in the most vulnerable in the borough, and that's why we'll be carving out that funding. We also want to make sure that we renew our commitment to helping with fuel bills and energy efficiency advice. And as I say, we have set up that task group to look at how we support schools to tackle food poverty, building on the task group. And part of the £600,000 will be an early payment into that further response. So I hope that was all useful, a lot to canter through. I don't expect everyone to have understood everything. We're going to make sure that not only are some of the key links put into the chat and made available, but as we said, this is being recorded, the recording will be shared, and all this information will be on various partnership messages going out to residents and organisations over the next few days. Thank you very much, and we will move on to our first panel, which is a panel based partly on what I've been discussing about the council response and how we're going to be supporting residents. I'm going to chair and introduce Councillor Rob Chapman, who is the Cabinet Member for Finance, Insourcing and Customer Services. Those are the teams that support residents around housing need and benefits. There is Deputy Mayor Antoinette Bramble, who is not only Deputy Mayor, but Cabinet Member for Education, Young People and Children's Social Care. Councillor Woodley, who is Cabinet Member for Families, Parks and Leisure, and within that is SEND and Early Years. Ross Hatfill, who is one of our incredible officers that work in benefits and housing needs and has been leading on the Money Hub. And then we've got Ali Halal, who represents East London CAB, Citizens Advice Bureau, and one of our key partners and advice providers. So that's our first panel. And I don't know if those colleagues want to just say hello, and then we'll or say a few words, and we'll move into questions.
Yeah, this is Ali Halil and Fiona, my colleague from the Citizens Advice Bureau. We're here. Thank you very much, Mayor, for inviting us to this gathering. We're here to help support anyone that has any questions that we can answer, respond to. We're more than happy to do that.
Okay, and as you said, I'm Ross Hatfill. I'm one of the officers responsible for introducing the new Hackney Money Hub, which really helps those residents in acute financial crisis as a single point of entry, and a single point of entry to all our discretionary hardship schemes, and a way of making sure that residents are getting all the money that they are entitled to.
So yeah, I'm Caroline Woodley. I'm Cabinet Member for Families, Parks and Leisure, as the Mayor said, and a very strong part of my brief is in how we support our families across Hackney. I do have a large focus on child poverty, and we know that if children are in poverty, it's because their families, their entire households are in poverty. So they've been driven into poverty through lack of access to affordable housing, to wages that don't cover the cost of living, to inadequate benefits. And that can lead with very young children, lack of access to childcare, which can lead to social isolation and mental health. So we have to wrap support around our families, and we try and do that in so many ways. A large section of my work is around children's centres and that sort of multi-agency approach we take to supporting families. So it might be that we identify families that need a little bit of extra help through our drop-in sessions or our stay and play, get to know the families, get to know the children. If a little bit of extra help is needed, we can look at children in need plans, family support plans. We can also work with our adventure playgrounds who know our families really well, particularly when we're doing sort of food support. We can get out there and make sure that our families are okay. And across our youth hubs as well. So the heartening bit is that of the sort of 32,000 children that we believe are sort of living in poverty, because, you know, if nearly half of our children in Hackney are in poverty, that's a lot of children. Of those, we know through our sort of data capture that we are supporting at least 18,000 of those through one or other plan that we have in place. And then, as the Mayor set out with the various kind of funding support, the Holiday Activity Fund, for example, we can make sure we get food out to families through the holidays. And we can work with the Alexandra Rose with their voucher scheme, and the Felix project to make sure that the food doesn't go to waste and that gets redistributed. But food support is really only one small part of it. There's There's a more sort of ephemeral kind of area of support around play. If I think of Hackney Play Bus or Hackney Play Association, all these groups that want to help families just enjoy living and, as I say, can sort of identify needs and pick up where extra support is needed in that process. And I think that's a really rounded kind of community focused way to reach out and engage, which gets me up in the morning, even though it's all quite challenging at times. Hi,
I'm Councillor Rob Chapman, pleased to meet you all. I'm the Cabinet Member for Finance, Sourcing and Customer Services, and as it says in the title there, my main responsibility is with the Mayor, responsibility for budget and finance across the Council. And in this context, of course, the whole issue of council tax a reduction scheme, the various discretionary schemes, the money hub all come under the realm of finance, and I work closely with my colleagues in helping deliver the council's response to this cost of living crisis. The Mayor said an awful lot in his introduction, which covers my portfolio, so I won't go into a great repeat of those issues, but I may pick up on some of them again, depending how your questions go.
Thank you. Last but not least, Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville, and you touched on many of the points that are so important. And I think it's just the important thing to reiterate. We are here because we are acutely aware of the challenges that our families, our residents face, and we want to, as a local authority, seek to work with the voluntary sector and organisations to address the response to the need that we see emerging and arising. The Mayor has set out the tasks that we have given officers about the work we're trying to do with schools in terms of how we work with schools to combat food poverty, broader than free school meals. That's part of it, of course, but there are other ways that we can support schools in combating this and working with them and looking at their expertise. Thank you, Councillor Woodley, for mentioning Hackney Play Bus. I'm one of the trustees, and I know how hard they work and see themselves as part of the response to the challenges that family have, but many organisations that do that, and I can see Tony here. And the task force is underway to ensure that we're working with schools and garnering that level of expertise. And ultimately, there's a broader support package that the Mayor spoke about that we offer our adults, inadvertently, that then supports children as well, because children that are in households that receive support inadvertently are supported as well. And we're working with schools to think about how we identify those children offer support. One of the things that might come up as a question or we might touch on is the offer that the Mayor and I said in terms of offering free school meals for children whose parents have no recourse to public funds. And that's something that we worked with officers and Councillor Chapman as well to ensure that actually that we're supporting all sorts of children in environments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you everyone for those introductions. We've got some questions coming in. I'm going to, so the first question we have is we need to make sure people are on the right type of benefit so they can get the right amount of help. I talked a bit about the Money Hub and so did Councillor Chapman and Ross. I just wonder between sort of Ross and Ali, just a bit about how we can make sure that people are getting the benefits that they need and actually deserve, because reducing stigma is a crucial part of making sure that people come forward and feel comfortable applying for the help that they're entitled to. So I might start with Ross and then talk to Ali and the CAB. Ross.
Yeah, thank you. Across Hackney, there is severe underclaiming of benefits that people are entitled to. So pension credit, for an example, £12.4 million each year is underclaimed in pension credit in Hackney, the largest amount of any London borough, and 1 in 2 people who should be getting pension credit do not claim it. The same pattern is identified across the disability benefits, PIP and ESA, and also across UC. There are hundreds and thousands of our residents who, if they claimed UC, would qualify for it, but they don't, either because they don't know about it or because of the stigma. Part of the role of the Money Hub is to identify those residents and get them to claim those benefits. The best thing we can do to deal with the cost of living crisis is to increase people's income, not just for 1 week with 50 quid, but to increase people's income on an ongoing basis. So we've got some software that identifies through data residents who are likely to be entitled to and eligible for some of those benefits. And we've got a team that will be working to really encourage them to claim. But it's also the community. It's getting the message out that actually, if you have worked, if you've paid taxes, then those state benefits are there for you if you're ill. They're there for you if you're retired and not managing, and you should be claiming. So part of it, we're really going to push take up of those benefits and reach out to people across the community to try and get them to claim. And the more the community can say, do you know about pension credit? Have you asked whether you're entitled? Do you know about these benefits? The better. The other thing, long term, the team is going to have a benefits expert that can really deal with things like personal independence payments, employment and support payments, because there's different versions of ESA. There's a support component and a work-related component. If you're on the support component, you're protected from the benefit cap and a whole host of things. But a lot of residents, because they don't understand the system, get put onto the wrong component. And what we can do by helping them with the application, by helping them through the appeals process, is make sure that actually if they are so disabled, they should be on the support component. It gets awarded first time, or if it isn't awarded, we can walk them through the process. So there is a lot we can do. But the main thing is people are missing out on tons of benefits. They're missing out on free childcare. They're missing out on free school meals. They're missing out on a whole host of other benefits. And it's our job to try and call those people, go to the places where they will be and say, this is your money, please claim it.
Thanks, Ross. And people are now in the Q&A box firmly tabling their questions, which we can all see as well. So I'll be coming and bringing in some of those shortly. Ali and the CAB.
Yeah, very similar to what Ross is saying, but we are working with a lot of residents in Hackney, and we work with the personal centres approach. So what we're actually trying to do is, once we get the residents to come into us, we don't look at just one aspect of their issue, we try and look at the whole thing. So we try to do a holistic work with the resident. So that means if they're actually working at the moment, there's in-work benefits that we can look at. If they're not working, we can look at the benefits they're actually entitled to. If they have a disability, or if someone in the family has a disability, we look at these kind of things as well. So as Ross said, it's just not one thing. We try to look at the whole thing, but the more the residents come to us, we will do income maximisation, we'll do benefit checks, we'll look at the whole situation in a holistic way and do the personalised work with them. But yes, they need to come to us, and if they come to us, we will help them. And I think, as Ross said, I think there is a kind of stigma sometimes where people may think, well, should I claim benefits? But we've got to get past that. Come, we're here to help people. We're open. We're at the Hackney Service Centre. We're at Genesis. We're at Hamilton Hospital. We're in Mare Street. We're here. Come. We have phone lines. We have emails. We have personal face-to-face now. So we are here, Mayor. We're here to help people. If they come to us, we will help them. We will increase their income if they're entitled to it.
Thanks so much. A real powerful end there about the role of the CAB and independent advice. And I'm really proud that we partner with you and invest in that work. And I just thank you for everything that you've done and are continuing to do. And I hope people do take up that offer. I'm going to go to one of the Q&A questions, which is around free school meals. And regardless of parents' income from connected communities. I think it's as Deputy Mayor Bramble and I said in our opening remarks, what we're going to do is set up this task finish group to meet before Christmas talk to those that are doing free school meals in the community, talk to the different ways of delivering that, thinking about how we can fund a better offer than the one that we have at the moment, but also recognising that we're probably unable to have a fully universal free school meal offer straight away. Many of the other places that are doing that work have done it over a number of years. I don't know if Deputy Mayor Bramble just wants to add a tiny bit more to that, but we know we want to do more. And I said that we're investing at least £300,000 in thinking about how we will do more coming out of that task finish group. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Yes, that's exactly it. We are looking at a model of what will work best with our schools, and we want to hear from the school community as well, what that might look like. We're going to talk to our partners in health to see what that dialogue can look like in terms of our health colleagues into response to this. And you're right, it would be easy just to roll it out and ensure that every child gets a free meal regardless of cost, but because we are in the nature where we are around finances, we are thinking about, well, if parents can afford to pay, what does that look like as well? And, you know, any model would look to see that parents that would want to contribute can contribute. And I know that happens in a lot of schools. I'd love to be able to say, if we could deliver free school meals and the parents who want to pay can pay for a child to have an after school club, but it isn't as simple as that. As the Mayor rightly said, some of the local authorities that have done this have been doing it for years. So it's what I don't want to sound offish now, it's in their base budget. So they've been planning for this for years and years and years, and it's been part of what they have been doing. Some local authorities that are doing it as well, they don't spend as much money per child per head. So one of the things that we do in Hackney is each year we spend £6 million on our children and young people. So again, it's looking at the money that we do spend, how do we spend that differently? The Mayor has worked with the team to ensure that we've got some additional finances to look at this, and we're going to take a strategic look at how we can better support children, because free school meals is only one part of solving food poverty. That's just a little part. You know, Councillor Woodley has talked about our adventure playground. Children go there and have free school meals after playtime. In our youth hubs as well, there are activities. Children have free access to food there. We have some clubs that are in our primary schools and where parents can come along and cook with their children. All those ingredients are provided free. So while Hackney may not say we are providing free school meals, there are lots of opportunities that we are providing free food for children and families throughout the borough. So we're going to look at that all together, look at what that offer looks like, and think about how we can harness it. So I know the easiest thing to say is Hackney's delivering free school meals, but reassure you, there are lots of opportunities for our children and family to get free food. The last thing I'm going to do before the chair cuts me off is also, when you make a referral to our multi-agency hubs, if a family that staff are dealing with listening to, or an agency refers a family, if they have need, we then ask for a referral group to be made. So we don't signpost them, we don't ask them to go anywhere else. If we are aware of a family at the point of our front door, we then facilitate that family to get support. So reassured, while we're looking at our free school meal model, while we're looking at food reduction model, any family in need right now can be signposted to get support. And I think that's the most important thing to leave you with.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. And it's not quite as stark as the stat that Ross gave us about pensioner credit, but I think there are 3,000 families in Hackney that are eligible for free school meals that haven't yet claimed it. So one part of our campaign this winter will be building on what both of them have said to increase that take-up of eligibility as well as expanding the offer. Now, there's no filter to the questions here. There are a lot of questions, I'm afraid, in the chat about access to advice, both via the service centre and also the CAB, and challenges are getting through and waiting lists and appointments. I think, Ali, you talk quite powerfully about all the locations people can now get to support with CAB. If I start with you, just offering that reassurance about where people can get advice and support in Hackney and how you're sort of scaling up to this challenge. And then maybe I'll go to Rob and Ross about how the Money Hub might work in terms of outreach and the HSC going forward. But Ali.
Yeah, Mayor, we are working very hard to try and respond to as many residents as we possibly can. We have a hybrid system as well, where we do appointments over the telephone. So if we can't do a face-to-face appointment, we'll do a hybrid appointment. But to be honest with you, if I said that we could deal with every single resident that called us, I'll be lying to you, because we just can't. We don't have that capacity. But what we do have outreach. We're working at the children's centres. We refer a lot of people that have got children under the age of 5 to children's centres. We have advisors at the children's centres all around Hackney. We have people on the phones. As I said, we have people at the Hackney Service Centre. And very soon, as you well know, we'll be opening the doors at 300 Mayor Street in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be seeing clients there as well. We'll be helping clients out, booking them appointments, be it over the phone or be it face-to-face. We get a lot of phone calls every day. We get a lot of people needing our help, support and advice. And we try our utmost, because we're passionate about helping people in this borough and we want to do the best that we can. But I'll say to you, we have a lot of places out there. We're pretty borough-wide, but I'm not trying to repeat, but there's no way we could help every single person, but we do try our best.
Thanks, Ali, and that is a very difficult context and a very honest response, even with the extra resource we've been able to put in. I think the Mayor of London is putting more funding into advice as well. Councillor Chapman, and then I'll go to Ross. There's also a digital divide question about complexity and forms coming up in the Q&A as well. So if people can just think about that. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. On the general point, obviously, just to reiterate completely that getting people to claim for existing benefits and that huge gap there is such an important way of both dealing with the crisis we're facing at the moment, but also in the much longer term, getting the rights for the people in Hackney that they need. There is an enormous need in the borough, as the Mayor set out in his introduction, and making the most of what's there already, especially things like pension credit, which are themselves a gateway to all sorts of other ways that people can get support, is really important. I think that, this is one of the key principles. I'll hand over to Ross in a minute, because he actually runs the service and is much more knowledgeable than me. But one of the important points of the Money Hub is to access all this in. At the same time, a key element of it is to make it much simpler for people to claim that the discretionary funds and that the council itself gives out. And at one point, I think we had 6 different forms for various different benefits and things, and now we've simplified that down to one. The hub has only been running, I think, now since the 1st of November. I'm not sure we've actually officially launched yet, to start the official launch. So it's very early days, but I think the response at the beginning is really, really exciting, and I think we've had a very enthusiastic response. We're also training our customer services teams. So we've had a fairly, I think 15 or 20 of our customer services team have now had a fairly in-depth set of training session to be able to understand these things much better. So and other people across the council. So when they're approached with a question which is either complex, it involves maybe a more mundane issue as well as benefit issues, they'll be able to handle it and either partly be able to deal with itself and partly signpost to the other parts and other parts of the council and other providers. And we've heard from Ali here today, the immensely good work that is done across the voluntary sector in this area, and the council always remained supportive of that, and look forward to continue to work with you on that, and from our own position, let's facilitate as much of that as possible. Anyway, Ross.
Yeah, I'm going to echo the CAB about challenges, about demand. So the Money Hub, we've been open since the 1st of November, and we've already had over 400 applications from residents, all of whom are in real crisis need. So there always will be capacity challenges. I think the key thing is there is an online form. It is very short and very simple. The numerous forms with complex languages and hundreds of questions have all gone. The form is very short, very simple. And the key part of the new process is the resident will get a call from one of our caseworkers, and they will be able to have an open, honest, non-judgmental conversation with us. So instead of a complex form where residents don't know if they're filling out the right bit, don't know if they're telling us all the thing, it's actually the key part of the process. Once we've got just the basic contact details, is a conversation, either over the phone or face to face if the resident prefers that. For those who can't use a form at all, if you phone 311 0208 356 3111, customer services will take the details, and again we'll call back. So it should be access to everyone. We're currently got most of the team in place, but we're out to recruitment for outreach workers who will be going out right across the borough. They'll be attending all the places where our residents come together. They'll be probably going to the housing forums, they'll be going to events, they'll be going to luncheon clubs, community events, voluntary associations, and they'll be trying to have conversations with residents. So for those who perhaps aren't connected into council services, never go anywhere near the service centre, never go anywhere near the town hall. Our aim is to get as much out into the community as possible. So so residents see us and can approach us where they feel comfortable. So the key parts: make access as simple as possible. So reduce the complexity, one simple form, one simple number to call in. And the main thing is to get out into the community and talk to residents face to face. We had the Winter Warmer event last week, and there's more benefit being at things like that, actually talking to residents and saying, you know, how can we help, than being isolated in the town centre and expecting them to come to us.
Thanks, Ross. There were a couple of pre-submitted questions about the sort of role of Hackney fixers and a more circular economy in sharing skills, reusing materials, and bringing together the community around that work. We saw a lot of that at Sustainability Day in October, where we brought together the community in both the Hackney Service Centre and the Town Hall Square. And I think our commitment is undimmed to that work, using things like Library of Things and other things to build resilience in the community, share skills, and create that reuse economy. That means that we reduce waste, which is good for the environment, but also things that people have finished with are shared and reused by our community. There's a lot of detail in those questions, which I can't possibly do justice to this evening, but I just wanted to acknowledge that they had been received. We're not going to get to every question, but we are keeping an eye on them, and the insight that people are providing is absolutely vital, and colleagues both on the webinar and supporting us are taking those down and making sure that they go into our response. I'm going to do one last set of questions, and I'm going to hand over to the second panel, which is chaired by Councillor Williams. I just wanted to bring in the conversation about how social workers and other frontline workers might be involved in this work. I think that's around the frontline training and making sure that everyone's aware of this new Money Hub. And people that are commenting about previous forms and access, it is important to say that it is a new service operating in a new way. Ross, did you want to talk, or Councillor Chapman, about kind of cross-council working and how we're trying to ensure that we're all joined up?
Do you want me to go first? I think the key thing is we're, as a council, a single point of entry. So for some residents, they'll approach us, they'll need one-off help, maybe £100 because they've had a crisis. That's all they need, they will go away. For other residents, they will have a lot of needs, a lot of requirements that are council-wide. So for those, we will work very holistically. And if they require input from social services, from housing, from whatever service it is within the council or across the wider and voluntary sector, we will work with them and we will work with those other services to try and resolve those issues. So we will be working closely on a council-wide basis where residents require that level of holistic support. Some won't, a lot won't, but where they do need, they've got 6 or 7 issues, we'll try and unpick them and we'll try and work across the council. We'll also be doing a lot of communications, briefings, training across the council so that other services are aware of the Money Hub and how to refer and what to do if they come across an issue. So this morning I was at the housing conference talking to our brilliant staff who work in housing, in Hackney Housing. And these are the people who do our repairs, sweep our estates. And I was telling them, this is the Hackney Money Hub. If you come across residents who are struggling and in real hardship, this is how you access us. And I'll be doing that and going around the whole of the council, or as much of it as I can, just so that our frontline staff know we're here and know that if they come across a resident who is struggling, this is where they can send them. So it's 2 things really. It's making sure we're holistic, and if someone has other issues, we make sure they get a warm handover to the bit of the council that can help. But also it's making sure the whole council and voluntary and community sector know we exist and know how residents can access us.
Thank you for that, Ross. That's really helpful. I mean, obviously the council's always worked together across departments to try and resolve these problems, but it's really, I mean, we're making real efforts to supercharge it now with the Money Hub and other initiatives which have started off only really this month. At a political level, there's a group of 4 of us that work together as cabinet members with the mayor to make sure that this is embedded across the council. And we really have a real strong will to make sure this becomes effective in dealing both with this crisis and with reducing poverty in the borough as we go forward.
Thank you, both Councillor Chapman and Ross. I'm really conscious of not crowding out the second panel. Some of the themes will continue, certainly the relationship with how we're working with the community sector. So I'm thinking about the question from Penny in the Q&A, how we'll continue to do outreach, how we'll continue to work together. And then when I'm not chairing the panel, I'm going to attempt to join colleagues in answering live some of the questions in the chat with my typing skills. So I'm going to close our panel and thank my colleagues for their contributions and all of those questions. And as I say, none of the feedback is going to be lost. And I know that Councillor Williams is just getting ready to start the second panel, and I will hand over to her. And as I say, I'm staying in the background and going to answer some of the questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Phil. You just caught me closing the window so you don't get noise from the traffic as it passes outside. Good evening and welcome to everyone. My name is Carol Williams. I'm the Cabinet Member for Employment Skills and Equalities. At the Council, I chair a group of some of those Cabinet members who you've met. I think all of us are actually online today. So I chair the group where we all work on poverty reduction, and the Council's response to the cost of living crisis is not a piece of work that any one of us can do individually or the mayor can do by himself. So we are taking a cross-portfolio approach to this, and you heard from my colleagues earlier about the work that they're leading on. So all of us are leading on this equally and delivering a response that best supports, as Phil was saying, some of our most vulnerable residents. So on the panel this evening, on the second panel this evening, we do have a couple of the councillors who you've already met. We've got Councillor Kennedy as well as Councillor Woodley. Also on this panel, we're joined by Lauren Tobias from Volunteer Centre Hackney, Tony Wong from HCVS and Hackney Gibbon, Jackie Benjamin from Old Hill Community School. Jackie is also the trustee of Clapton Commons. I'm going to hand over, I don't think that Councillor Kennedy and Woodley need to introduce themselves again. So I'm going to hand over to Lauren, Tony and Jackie to quickly introduce themselves before we move on to questions. In that order, I think. So Lauren first.
You can probably tell I'm not Lauren.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Jane.
Don't worry.
Jane.
Lauren is around, but I'm going to front for the moment. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for taking the time to attend this evening. I'm from Volunteer Centre Hackney. The clue is in the name. We're all about volunteering, about encouraging and supporting residents to share their skills, share their experience, get involved in volunteering, help to improve the lives of people in Hackney. We work with a huge range of organisations, recruiting volunteers, putting them in touch with the organisations and then supporting them. Annually, we recruit hundreds every year. We're working with a lot of organisations at the moment that have a specific role in helping or trying to help to alleviate the cost of living crisis for residents. We work with organisations that are supporting the most vulnerable in the borough. They have an urgent and immediate need for volunteer support. And we're hoping that as a result of our participation this evening and also general campaigning, that we're going to be able to recruit more volunteers to support them during the winter months. I can talk a little bit later about the sort of roles that we have, but it won't surprise you to hear that our food partners, Made in Hackney, the Felix Project, those sorts of organisations urgently need volunteers to help them get food out to people in need. We have a befriending service where our most vulnerable in society can be matched with a volunteer who will drop in, chat to them, go for a walk with them, give them take them for a coffee, that sort of thing. We always have an urgent need to have volunteers for that. But there are lots of opportunities. They're all incredibly flexible. They can fit into your timetable. You don't need to commit to hours every week. You can do it for as little as 30 minutes a week. You can do it as a one-off event by helping out at a lunch, for instance, or you can do it more regularly. So basically, there's something for everyone.
Tony.
Hi everyone. Echo the thanks for coming this evening. So I'm Tony, Chief Exec for Hackney CBS. So CBS stands for Council for Voluntary Service, for those that don't know. And essentially we are the umbrella body for the voluntary community sector. So all the smaller charities and community organisations that operate across City and Hackney. We provide support to make sure that they are sustainable organisations, that they're connected organisations, both to each other, but also to statutory providers. And we also facilitate the Hackney Giving. So I'm here kind of representing both Hackney CBS, but as part of our work, we also deliver Hackney Giving, which is our fundraising arm. And so through Hackney Giving, historically, we've funded various different projects, I should say, but over the course of the pandemic, a lot of the work that we've done has been around the response to COVID-19. But as we now shift into this new emerging crisis, our focus has really shifted to the cost of living crisis. So we've got a current funding campaign open at the moment to try and generate funds. As you've heard throughout the discussion already, there's a lot of pressure on statutory services. I've seen in the chat a lot of conversations about challenges getting access to, to those appointments, and you've heard those responses. We're hoping through the fundraising that we'll do through Hackney Giving that we can bolster that support through the voluntary community sector, because we know so many residents do rely on the voluntary community sector as their first point of access to access support. So we're hoping through any fundraising that we can bolster that support and make the offer of support more accessible to local residents.
Thank you, Tony. Is Jackie on the line? Jackie, can I hand over to you?
Hi, I'm Jackie Benjamin. I'm the head teacher at Old Hill Community School and also a trustee at Clacton Commons. One of the things is my school has around 49% of children on free school meals. So we really have to look at a way of connecting with our families and ensuring that we do have a response for the cost of living crisis. We've been doing quite a few things already, like we have a food bank at our school, we have a swap for clothes, we have family support where families can come in and get the support that they need. We're also looking at doing things for the parents as well as the children, because we understand if we don't help the parents to get over the stressful time that they have at the moment, then that is going to make things worse for the children. So we do things like qigong, I can just about say that, but it's some relaxation, some meditation for the parents. And when we get the parents in to do those things, then we're able to signpost them to other things which will help them to alleviate some of the stresses that come with not having enough. We have the Citizens Advice Bureau with our school as well. We also have, I think the main thing is our food bank that we have on a Wednesday night. That is a completely voluntary organisation that comes in and does that. And we're trying to get volunteers to support them so that they can do it for a lot more people. It's not just for the school, it's for any of the residents around, it's for the whole community. So we are working on trying to develop that and make it into something really nice for everybody within the community. How that's linked with Clapton Commons is that with the Clapton Commons, which is just down the road from the school, we actually do a lot of work where we get the parents to come to some of the meetings. We're in the process of trying to build a warm hub. So what we've done is we've linked it so that it's at the same time as the food bank, or just before the food bank, so that people can go and have some time at the warm bank and actually, get some advice, get to be signposted to other pieces of advice, and then come over to the school, to the food bank. So those are the kind of things that we're doing at the moment.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you to all the panelists. I'm going to move straight on to our first question. If we could take a moment or two to just talk about the Victorian Wick heat exchange. That's a question that's been submitted to us. I'm going to ask Councillor Kennedy to talk about why schemes like this matter and why we need a range of schemes in place, because not every community can redistribute wealth in their locality. So for those of you who just need a little bit more information on what the fuel exchange does, it allows those who can afford to do so to donate their energy money to the Victorian Wick section of the Fuel Bank Foundation. Councillor Kennedy, can you just talk to us a little bit more about why schemes like this matter?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Councillor Chris Kennedy. Good evening, everybody. I'm the Cabinet Member for Health, Adults, the Voluntary Sector and Culture here at the London Borough of Hackney. So the Fuel Bank Foundation is this organisation which has come up with a very simple idea of allowing people who are well enough off, and we do have people like that in Hackney. I think, as the Mayor said in his introduction, ultimately the people of Hackney make the difference, and people of Hackney did help us amazingly during the pandemic. The Fuel Bank Foundation allows them to donate the extra money that they feel they have or they don't need. So that's the top-up money from the government. If you're well enough off, you can give it into your heat exchange, your local heat exchange. The first one in Hackney was set up by the de Beauvoir Association in the de Beauvoir area. The exciting news is that tonight, the Victoria and Wick heat exchange has gone live. This was organised by one of our colleagues, Councillor Penny Root, who is our councillor member on the Wells Street Common neighbourhood partnership, and she had the idea that for those two wards that make up that neighbourhood partnership, that's Victoria and Wick, we could have a heat exchange there. It went live today. Obviously, we'll put the links to these in the chat, and those are just extra ways in which you can encourage residents to help out those who actually need a bit more help than they might do themselves. That's basically to add on to what Tony said about supporting Hackney Giving. Hackney Giving will support organisations. This came up in one of the questions in the chat. So Hackney Giving will be able to support organisations that gives to people who don't pay on prepayment meters, because obviously the Fuel Bank Foundation and the heat exchange is just for people who have prepayment meters. And then those of you who can donate your time, absolutely get in touch with Volunteer Centre Hackney. And thank you all for the help that you're prepared to offer. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Chris. I think the sound was very low there. I think I saw a comment come up in the chat. So we may all have to speak up. Can you hear me any better? Hopefully you can. You've touched on the Hackney Giving, and I wonder if Tony can just expand on that a little bit for us, of why it works and how people can make a donation.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, it is our local giving scheme. So the way in which people can access more information about it is by looking online. So hackneygiving.org.uk is the website, and that will talk you through the various live campaigns that we've got now. As I say, the live one that we're focusing on at the moment is the cost of living. Obviously, we are dependent on how much funds we have in the pot to how many grants we can award. And so, like, you know, we would love to make many more awards. So to give an example, at the moment, we've had a round that happened last week where we were able to make 3 awards, but we had 17 applications that were considered as fundable, but we're only able to make a small amount of awards because of the limited funds that we have. So yes, it is frustrating that we can't award all of the bids that come to us, but that's not to say that we don't want to, but it's more to say that we are, as like everyone else, struggling to generate those funds. There is a cost of living crisis at the moment, and we are dependent on the donations that we get. So the call out and the ask to anyone who's, you know, on the call tonight is to help us. I appreciate it's a tall order to ask people to donate, but if you can, these funds are vital, because what they will do is help us bolster the capacity in the local sector. So to bolster the support to help people with claiming their benefit entitlements, for example. This is the sort of work that organisations in the voluntary community sector can support with, and obviously from the conversation that's been had already, that's much needed and much in demand. Some of the grants that we have been able to afford are helping with childcare provision, because we know that that is a big barrier actually for parents to be able to address their current challenges. We're also very much aware that people are experiencing mental health challenges, either as a direct result of their situation, or because they're actually a local resident that's working within the local voluntary and community sector, and they're under increased pressure, and the mental well-being of wanting to actually help, but not being able to because they don't have the capacity or there's not the funding there, is a big concern that we're hearing from our kind of membership when we go out and we speak to community members and organisations. So yes, there's many ways in which we would love to help, and I think it's, you know, it's a call out, it's a call to action for everyone that's listening, really. If you can go to the website and promote that to your networks, if you happen to work for an employer with deep pockets, maybe there's a corporate ask you can get of your employer, because any donation that we get for the cost of living crisis is committed to going back out the door. So it's 100% £1 donated, 100% £1 goes back out to community organisations. There's no cost that we are taking from any of the donations that we receive.
Thanks, Tony. That's really helpful. So individuals can make a donation to Hackney Giving, and even if those who are on the call listening in or listening at a later date to the recording, even if they may not be able to make a donation, we are also looking for corporate donors as well. So your employer possibly, or anyone within your network. Thank you. That's really helpful. I'm going to move on to another question. And this is for everyone to think about. How can we ensure that we get support to Hackney's diverse communities, and how can we overcome language barriers, and what support are you offering, and what coordination is needed? Shall I pick somebody first?
I can come in just on one point around the holiday activity fund, if that's helpful, Councillor Williams.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, just because with the funding that goes to families that are eligible for free school meals obviously doesn't then apply to, for example, our families in Orthodox Jewish communities. So because we recognise there's a gap there, we work with a number of different organisations within those communities, I should say, rather than a singular community, to ensure that we do some outreach. So I think there were at least 11 clubs that we had Orthodox Jewish engagement in the last holiday activity fund period. But we also try and reach beyond that as well, certainly in terms of recognising the need for translation. Almost every information brochure, guide, here to help sort of document that we put out there encourages people to get in touch if they need support with translation. And again, I have to say, community support is phenomenal around this. You know, I've met families who volunteer their time where they have an attachment, say, to a private, independent or voluntary nursery or children's centre. They'll volunteer their time to ensure that other parents that they meet through those centres and playgroups and nurseries understand what they're entitled to and can overcome the language barrier in that way. And really, really grateful to all those people for giving their time for doing that. So it is always worth getting in touch with us if you're aware of anybody who's falling through a gap, because we do actually reserve funds out of those sort of pots of money we get, the household support fund and the holiday activity fund, to ensure we can reach that a little bit further than the tried and tested routes.
Thank you, Councillor Woodley. I don't know if Tony might want to come back in there.
Yeah, just to say, yeah, we were obviously with a number of community organisations that work with specific ethnically diverse community groups. And so, yeah, a lot of them will offer specific tailored support and translation services. So if people want to find out more about if you've got a specific community in mind that they need to tap into, then they can reach out to us. So we've got a main, I think, info at hackneycbs.org.uk. So all of the information that I've verbalised, I understand there's going to be a mail out sent out after this this evening's session. So I'll make sure that information about how to contact us, and we can direct you to any relevant organisation, community organisation that you need to speak to. But yeah, we'll have a number.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Shall I move on to another question? There is a question. I'll take one from the chat. We do have one on the list of organisations that are providing benefit advice in Hackney, and I wonder if Jane and Tony might want to come in there. I don't know if I can open this back up to previous panel members, but there are a number of organisations on here who might be able to respond to that. I don't know if Ali wanted to. Is Ali still on the call?
Councillor Williams, I can't hear you very well. I'm really sorry.
Oh, do I need to speak up? Is that any better?
Yeah, that's a bit better. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, there is a question in the chat about how we can coordinate a list of those organisations in the borough that give benefit advice.
Yes, that's what CBS.
Yeah. Really, I mean, I expect we have lists of organisations that provide advice and support within the Borough of Hackney. There is an array of advice agencies within the borough that you was talking about, languages that do speak an array of languages. For instance, you have the Turkish, Kurdish, Bengali, Vietnamese. There is a quite an array of languages within the borough. We actually do have quite an array at Tower Hamlets, at Hackney CAB, because a lot of our advisors do speak different languages. So we're fortunate there, and we do have lists. So if anyone wants to come to us and say, for instance, we couldn't help or support them based on the fact that we didn't have appointments available, or the appointment was too far away and it was an emergency, although if it was a real emergency, we would support it. We would give them a list of other agencies that could support them within the borough.
Thank you, Ali. I'm going to move on to a question about volunteering. Volunteers really helped during the pandemic response. So this is probably one for Jane on the call as well. They really helped during the response. How easy is it to get volunteers to support now, and what has changed? What's different now?
Yeah, the volunteers during the pandemic were absolutely unbelievable. You know, they responded incredibly quickly. I think, you know, the mayor said earlier, you know, it was to do with the people of Hackney, basically, who responded to the crisis and who helped, and they certainly did. There's always a need for more volunteers, but when things are tough, I think the pandemic has shown that absolutely people do respond. I'd also just like to pick up on the earlier question, which was to do with how you target, you know, certain communities and how you make sure everybody is helped, who needs to be helped. At the Volunteer Centre Hackney, basically anybody can be a volunteer. We work with every community in the borough. We're based in local surgeries, which obviously have an incredibly diverse population and are incredibly representative of their local areas. We work with organisations like AfriDac, I think has already been mentioned, with Carib Eats. You know, we've got connections into all of these groups. And of course, our volunteers are from those diverse groups. So, you know, they're incredibly well placed. We also have community champions who go into local communities and tell everybody, or help to disseminate information about health issues and other things. And many of our volunteers are native speakers as well. So, you know, we rely on volunteers to get the messaging and get the help out to where it needs to be. There was a tail off in terms of recruiting volunteers because, of course, the pandemic, you know, has eased. I wouldn't say it's gone away, but certainly things are a lot better. People have returned to work. You know, life is more normal than it was. But we are seeing interest. The current cost of living crisis is affecting everyone. People do want to help. The people of Hackney are amazing. We are campaigning for, as I say, specific roles to help at food banks, to help with warm hubs. We know that there's going to be demand for more volunteers to help at those. They're only just beginning to come into effect, but they will need volunteers to help man them, to welcome people and to do the signposting if they can to the other services that are available. So yes, it has been difficult, but we're seeing increased interest given the publicity that there is about the cost of living crisis. So I think we can be optimistic, but if anybody is listening here this evening and is interested, we've got a volunteer fair at the CLR James Library next Thursday in the afternoon from 3:30 to 6. And you can also pop onto our website. If websites are not your thing, if you don't like form filling, give us a call, pop into the office, and we can talk to you about what you might be able to do to help.
Thank you, Jane. I presume we can put those links, times and telephone numbers in the chat as well.
Yeah.
There are no more questions, but there is a comment in the chat. So I'm going to just quickly turn to Tony. If organisations are submitting requests for financial help through Hackney Giving and they're not successful the first time around, can they submit another bid? Maybe you can just talk about the process a little bit more for us.
Yeah, so if you're not successful, we don't have any set limitation on you not being able to reapply. I think what I would advise you to do, depending on the feedback, so we do try and give feedback to unsuccessful applications. The level of feedback will depend to how far you got in the process. But what I would encourage you to do, if you have been unsuccessful, largely it's something that can be supported by our organisational support team. So we have, as part of the work that we do, a team called organisational support, and they support organisations with, with all their development needs, essentially, but fundraising is a key component of the support offer. So often what we would do, if we see applications that are not quite fundable, but because there's certain pieces of information in the funding proposal that's not clear, or that's been missed out, but we think actually there's some merit in there, that if we just had a bit more information, sometimes we do try and seek that information. Sometimes it's not always possible. And sometimes when we try and seek that information, we don't get necessarily what we need to make a fundable decision on it. So what I'd encourage you to do is to reach out to our organisational support team before you submit a new bid. Perhaps what they can then also do, if they get enough time, they can actually have a look at your bid in advance of it being submitted to, just to see whether there's anything else that you might want to tweak. And just to shout out as well, similarly to Jay, in that we host coffee mornings last Friday of every month. So our next one, I think, is on the 28th of this month. At our office, I think we open the doors about 9:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. We roll on till about 11 or half 11. And again, it's an opportunity to speak to staff there. If you're thinking about putting in a bid, potentially we'll have someone from our organisational development team. But also, if you're a resident and you're just wanting to find out what services are available, it's a good opportunity because it's open to all the voluntary community sector organisations and residents alike to just get a sense of what's happening, what services are available and how can they access those services. It's a good way to network as well.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for everyone who contributed to that panel. That's the end of the questions that we have. I know that there's quite a few that are being answered in the chat. So I'm going to end on that question and I'm going to hand back over to the Mayor, Philip Glanville. He's going to sum up and close our session for us this evening.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. I was just finishing one of the last responses in the Q&A, and you almost caught me as I caught you with the window closing. I really, though, was listening in on the conversation. I think it was really valuable to hear from voluntary sector organisations, but also the partnership with schools. I was very struck with Jane's call to arms around the volunteer fair next week at CLR James Library. This event is part of a big continuum of interventions and support and face-to-face. Today, the whole town hall was full of a jobs and skills fair, which Councillor Williams and Hackney Opportunities and Hackney Works was leading in partnership with Peabody, one of our largest housing associations. We've got that volunteer fair in a week, next week. I think it's on the 17th, isn't it, Jane? Yeah, good. And so I really appreciate we've had, for most of the time this evening at the summit, over 100 people on this webinar. That's a huge reach. There's been lots of detailed questions. There have been partners, faith organisations, community organisations, churches and everything in the chat as well. And I think it's really shown how Hackney is committed to responding to the cost of living crisis. I recognise completely this is a digital event. And as I say, that's why I wanted to mention some of those other conversations and ways we've been engaging. If anyone is here, either on the panel or watching the webinar, that has an idea for an event like this that would bring this conversation closer to their organisation or communities, get in touch with me via mayor@hackney.gov.uk, and I can direct it to a cabinet member, to one of our partner organisations, or one of my cabinet colleagues. We want to be out there, we want to be having these conversations. I know every single one of us go out there and visit organisations in relation to our portfolios. Councillor Chapman and I were, as I say, with Hackney Citizens, talking about energy resilience and poverty. Ross has been out to a ward panel in Dalston. I'm not going to speak for the community organisations because they're out there on the ground all the time. Councillor Woodley is always out in our youth hubs, adventure playgrounds and early years facilities. Councillor Bramble has been out there, especially in the context of our anti-racism work, even this week, talking at our children's centres about that work. And Councillor Williams firmly leads from the front with New City College, out with our opportunities hubs, our partners, and I know is passionate about adult skills and also making sure that they're very much involved in this conversation. And Councillor Kennedy, you're always working with our social care colleagues, and it was really good to have Housing with Care in the town hall being recognised for their contribution in recent weeks. So I've taken a lot from this event. I think all the colleagues from the council and community organisations hopefully have. Just to reiterate, there will be a stakeholder briefing going to community organisations based on all of the materials and announcements that I spoke about and my colleagues have spoken about today. Anyone that signed up to the resident e-newsletter that the council sends twice a week will get a link to the webinar, the information that underpins it, information about things like the Money Hub, and that will go directly to people's inboxes. If you've not signed up to the newsletter, please do so. It's where we provide all of our key information twice a week, but we're very conscious digital divide. So that's why there are 10,000 copies of this booklet out in the community at key community locations. If you think we've missed somebody out, again, get in touch and we'll get copies to you. This is the first edition, and it isn't just council support. It's got all of the organisations like lunch clubs and community organisations in there, and making sure that we don't leave people behind with a digital divide. And Love Hackney, the magazine that we put through people's doors, the last 3 issues, I think from the start, have had information about our cost of living response, and we will be making sure that the next issue continues that theme and links through to the key resources. And there is always 0208 356 3111, which links into the Money Hub and that work. So thank you everyone for coming this evening. I really thank my co-panelists and all of those that have organised tonight. They also underpin the response. And a big thank you to all of our community partners that have joined us as well, because I know that this is just the latest crisis that they're responding to, that they were with us through COVID, they were with us through austerity, and they're going to be with us this winter as we respond to the cost of living crisis together. Thanks everyone.